Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Kalicube Tuesdays. I'm Jason Barnard, and I'm here with Letitia Boardman. Is that the correct way to say your name?
It is not. It's Letitia Boardman.
A quick hello, and we're good to go. Welcome to the show, Letitia Boardman.
That's perfect.
With a slight
Thank you.
French accent. Lovely to have you here. And we're going to be talking about the power of delegating in building trust and confidence. Now, I think delegating is important just in and of itself. And if it can build trust and confidence as well, then we're winning on three fronts. So
Absolutely.
Delegating in and of itself is super important, and we don't do enough of it in general.
That's right.
And then we build trust and confidence, which helps the people that we're delegating to build themselves personally.
Correct.
Oh, super. So that's where we're going with this episode. It's lovely to meet you.
Yes.
You work at Microsoft.
I do. Yes. I currently work
and you have a huge team.
I do have a very large team. It's a global team that is part of Microsoft Advertising, and we do sales enablement for our team, and we support the sales organization.
Brilliant. And then you're also Super Myself Coaching, which I love as a name.
Yeah, thank you. That came from a coaching session that I had with my own coach. So it was it's about being, your most authentic self.
Oh, right. Brilliant. So the coach has a coach, and the coach has a
Absolutely.
coach as well.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Right.
I think every coach should have a coach.
Yeah. And I was thinking it goes up and up and up and never ends. But in fact, it probably goes round in circles.
It probably is more of a virtuous cycle. You are right.
How lovely. So
Yes.
Super Myself Coaching is all about being your most honest self, being honest with yourself and communicating on that.
I have a punchline around it that's basically, it's the practice of being unapologetically you in all the aspects of your life that you want to focus on. So I believe, there's different slices of the pie that make up your whole life. And this is my goal as a coach, is to help people find the ways to be their most authentic self.
Oh, cool. How many parts to the pie are there?
Well, in my pie, I would say there's at least 6. So, there's your career, there's your family, there's your friends, there's your health, there's your finances, your community, there's your hobbies. They're very important to your wellness. And so I think those are some of the things that would make up that pie.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Now, we're going to be talking about delegation and building trust and confidence, but that was a really nice little sideline there at the start. But before we get going, brand SERPs. This is what I came across when I searched your name. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I've never seen a brand SERP with just social media platforms on it.
Oh, I know. I was thinking this through, and it was the part I was most nervous about for this whole session, and was also the part I'm the most excited about, because I clearly need some help with my brand SERP. And I feel like I'm with the right people to help me figure this out, especially as I start to think about what's next for me post my corporate life, which I call my PCL, my post-corporate life. And where I can learn to develop what my brand SERP looks like.
Right. Brilliant. Well, I can give you one piece of advice right off the bat, and that's get yourself a personal website. Even with 2 pages, it will dominate very quickly. And that's where you can control your brand SERP. It's through your entity home, and your entity home is the website that you own, control, and it represents you as a personal brand, a Super Myself.
Exactly.
And then I looked at Microsoft Bing, and I got this, and it's brilliant. Microsoft Bing Chat. Letitia Boardman.
That's right.
I speeded this up because it's still a little bit slow on Bing Chat and Google's SGE. But then it immediately asked me, am I looking for a specific Letitia Boardman? And it asks about the Microsoft one. So I then say, yes, I want more information about the Microsoft one.
Yeah.
And we've paused it here for a moment. That looks like a pretty good description of you.
That is a very good description of me. It's not 100% accurate, but it's fairly accurate. Yes.
Brilliant. And then I went into the speaking topic. So these are questions that Bing Chat suggested to me. And I think this is really important because I wouldn't have thought to ask that question, but Bing encouraged me to ask that question. And now I know the answer to that question, even though when I started searching your name, the question hadn't occurred to me. And for
That's
me,
brilliant, actually, that's very brilliant. Giving you prompting questions.
Yeah, and which questions it suggests depends on the understanding it has of the person or the company. So those follow-up questions are really important. That means that it's understood that speaking is a huge part of your super myself.
Exactly.
And it pushed that to the fore. So you need to train these machines to push the parts of you, which of the 6 parts of your pie you want to the front, so that your audience gets the information you want and is drawn down the funnel in the way that you want. That's the future of SEO. That's the future of generative AI in search, and I love it.
I do too. That was very impressive.
Super duper. Thank you. I think Bing's really good, and I talk to Fabrice Canel a lot, and
I use it
Fabrice
quite
Canel is a great representation of Bing.
Exactly. I use it quite frequently in my day-to-day, just to even help me with conversation starters. So it's been, in communications, etc. So it's very helpful.
Ooh. Right. Oh, so you typed into Bing Chat, what shall I say to Jason Barnard when I go on his show?
I did, absolutely, without a doubt.
And it said, just mention brand SERPs and he won't shut up.
Exactly. Yeah, he'll be so excited and he'll just talk to me about it.
Brilliant. But that's not the topic for today. The topic for today is delegating. Now, I know that I've struggled a great deal with delegating. I think, I can just do that myself and it'd be much quicker. And probably better done. That's the wrong approach.
That is the wrong approach. And it is a pitfall I've absolutely fallen into myself as well. And so some of the questions I ask myself when that happens is why I feel that way. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes what I realized is it comes down to control. And it's control on my part. So it's a little bit of like, well, I can do it better. I can do it faster, which might be true for one time. But the reality is if you give someone an opportunity to do it themselves, they will become faster over time as well. And therefore gives you some additional space back to take on something else. So I've learned to delegate and to let go a little bit of control. I think that's probably part of the key. And some of the areas that I would say the vast majority of us, myself included, struggle with when it comes to delegating.
Right. Well, can I add another reason one might do that?
Sure.
Probably it's the reason I would do it more, is impatience. I just want to move forwards. I want to get it done. And I hate the idea of sending it to somebody, waiting 2 days for it to come back, and then saying, well, that's not quite what I needed, sending it back, and then it's a week gone by before it's done.
Yes, that's fair. And I would say to you that that's also short-sighted.
Yes, without the glasses.
So, yeah, exactly. Short-sighted in that, of course, the first time someone takes on a new task, it's going to take them longer. And so that is where your patience has to come into play. But the more someone does a task, the faster they're going to get, just like anybody, so it's the same way for us. Like if someone were to send us something and say, hey, can you do this? The first time around, it's going to be the longest time it ever takes us. And then it's going to get faster and faster as we become more proficient in whatever that task might be.
Right. So let go so you don't want to control everything. Be patient. Understand that the other person will catch up with you.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, they'll probably even overtake you if they're doing that more constantly, more frequently than you were.
Well, and they'll also find potentially different ways to do it, which might bring in different aspects of it. I'm a big believer in, 3 brains is better than 1. And so having someone else take a look at it and come from a different perspective, you're going to be able to expand and grow what that task might actually look like in the end.
Right. Oh, and I've had an experience recently whereby I've delegated something. one of the things that we do in Kalicube, I delegated it a year ago. The person who's taken it on has got better and better and better and better. And now I'm imagining what they could do, and I've got no idea how they might do it. But I just think, oh, that might be a good idea. And that's a really nice position to be in. But once again, I had to be patient for a year. Go ahead.
For them. No, I totally agree with you. I think the one thing also is to be patient for that year. And now that you have the ideas, you literally can brainstorm with them. And chances are high that they will be the ones that come back with how this can be, how your ideas can be implemented and how they can potentially grow whatever you're working on to be with the next level. I said, there's one thing, that's one thing. I said, the other thing that does though, is when you were to delegate to this person, it gives you more time back too, which means you can take something else on, right? So when it comes to prioritization, that's really important for you to be able to say, hey, what do I need to delegate so that I can then take on something else? And it's also nice to see that person flourish, right? To see them, take something on and own it themselves, and to see them continue to grow. And that's where that kind of confidence comes into place. But then imagine they now say, oh, well, Jason trusts me to do this. So I'm now the owner of it. So he trusts me. So, and it builds that, building that confidence also builds motivation. So the more trust you have, the more you're going to be able to do.
Right. And I think kind of the control aspect is something that is ingrained in a lot of us, especially people who start companies or are in leadership roles.
Mm-hmm.
And it holds us back, and it indicates to people that we don't trust them, which means that they're not comfortable and they don't move forwards. So we're creating a truth that doesn't necessarily exist.
That is correct. I think you could go either way, right? So if you don't delegate, it builds that sense of not trust, and therefore you have a vicious cycle. Where if you do trust and you allow the person to learn and grow and develop and build that confidence, you end up having a virtuous cycle. So you have an opportunity as the delegator to determine basically which way you're going to go.
Right. Virtuous or vicious? I love it. What happens when you delegate the first time and it all goes horribly wrong?
Yeah. It does happen. And the one thing that I love about when things go horribly wrong, love might be a strong word, but the reality is that one of the best ways for all of us to learn is from our mistakes. So when it comes to that time, I would say I probably look at, what my contribution was into that potential, it going all wrong. Like, did I provide the full clarity that they needed? Did I provide the guidance that they may have needed? Because there is a fine balance between, like the autonomy that might be needed versus the guidance that's also needed. So taking a look at kind of the role I played in potentially that going wrong is definitely one area. The other area is working with that person, one of the key things I've learned in my experience when it comes to where things go wrong is, how do you have that conversation from a feedback perspective? And one of the best things I've ever learned was to ask the person where they think things went wrong first.
Ooh.
We ourselves know, we know what we could have done better. So I think that's one of the big key learnings I've had as well. And that when that happens, like, hey, let's sit down and let's say, hey, where do you think that you could have improved? Where could this have been improved? Whatever it might be. And I would say 90% of the time that person knows, so it's like, you can agree with them. You can add to them. And there might be times where they say something goes wrong and you're like, I actually think that went well. So it's an opportunity to open up that conversation, but also to determine what the path forward is, and know that they're learning, right? That's the other thing is like people love to learn, they want to grow, and that's definitely an opportunity.
Right. Yes, 100%. And related to that, everybody wants to learn. I think we're all in that situation. Are some people not comfortable with being delegated to, i.e., responsibility, and it's simply not a good idea to delegate? Or is that a false assumption that I would make, that some people are suited to being delegated to and others aren't?
That's a great question. Personally, I believe people are most comfortable with delegation when you're delegating something that they like,
Yes.
right? So if you have something that's a strength of theirs, so that's where that kind of relationship and that kind of rapport is going to come into play. If you're delegating to someone who doesn't necessarily like to do something, I think you have a little bit of a friction that will happen there. And that would be someone that would like, I don't like to do it. I genuinely do not believe people in general across the board don't like being delegated to. I think it's more around what they're being delegated than it is about being delegated to.
Right. Now, I mean, I've had a couple of cases where people have said, I would rather you just told me what to do. I do it, give it back to you because I just don't want the responsibility. I like just turning up, being told that I've got this, that, and the other to do, and then I go home. In that circumstance, would you suggest more saying, well, okay, we need somebody, we're delegating specific tasks, but we need to structure it incredibly well. So it is delegation. It's just delegating very specific structured tasks with timeframes.
It's interesting you say that. There's different, I would say, theories around that. I would say one thing is like, as you think about like situational leadership as one of the key things we talk about, right? So when you think about someone who's first learning something, that is going to be something that's much, much more directive than it is going to be much more, leaving them to autonomy, right? Like, so I think that will happen, right? If someone's like, just tell me what to do. And that's typically when it's brand new, right? So that's typically when it's brand new. And that's where you need to work with them on that confidence piece, right? Like that's also an opportunity to say, hey, I actually trust you to know how to do this. And if you need guidance and support as you figure it out, let me know, because that's where the confidence is going to come into play.
Right. Okay. So that makes me now think of two things. Number one is even when somebody's saying, just give me the work to do, you're still delegating. And the second is once they've figured it out and they've become confident with the work, then they're very likely to want to do more and to want to have more responsibility, because otherwise you're stuck in one specific role and nobody wants that.
Right. And you're not learning. We're going back to that again. You're not learning. You're not growing. Exactly. And I think people in general want to learn and grow.
Right. Super. Right. Next question is, once I've delegated to somebody, how can we figure out within the company how those people then delegate to other people? So we've got a cascading delegation system.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great one. Yeah, that's a great one. I think it also goes back to prioritization, I think, as well. So twofold. I would say prioritization is one key thing. And so everyone has to make that decision of what they're going to prioritize, how they're going to prioritize. And part of prioritization is, what do you delegate? I do also think that it's really important to learn people's strengths. And that doesn't matter where you are. So like if so a peer and I might know that the other person has different strengths. And that might be the opportunity to delegate, right? Say, oh my goodness, I'm not like, I'll give you a personal example. I am not someone who loves digging into data. I love looking at it, like what's actually been like, been pulled out and like looking at it and being able to hypothesize against it. But I'm not the person who loves like digging in and doing it. Can I do it? Sure. But do I love it? No. And I have someone on my team who absolutely loves doing it. So when the time comes, I'll say, hey, I really think we could go and see if we can find the data that like proves our hypothesis around X, Y, and Z. Can you help me do that? He then in turn will look to his team who are experts at this and say, hey, will you guys help me figure this out? How do you think we should do this? And so it ends up being that, to your point, that kind of cascade delegation that ultimately started, up here with like a hypothesis. And then how do we actually determine how to figure out whether our hypothesis is true or not? And so that's something that we've cascaded kind of down the line as an example.
So if you're the top delegator and you've delegated down, and that person then thinks, well, I can do it myself, it'll be quicker, and fails to delegate, how can you deal with that?
I think that goes back to that feedback conversation again. I think there's an opportunity there, where, you can say what could have been done differently, what would you improve? What went well, we want to talk about that too, right? Like what went well. Because I do think that I think most people will end up realizing it, like, oh my God, I probably could have used someone else's expertise or someone else's help on this. I think that happens a lot. Or they might come back and say, hey, I really wanted to get it done quickly. And then the question is, what's driving that? Like what was driving you wanting to turn around quickly? Like, and again, looking at myself, was it me? Did I provide guidance that I needed to turn around quickly?
Yes.
Those are the kinds of things that, that I have to take responsibility for and accountability for as well when it comes to delegating.
And that means that when you're talking to the people around you, the people you're delegating to, there has to be trust both ways. They need to trust you to be able to say what they feel about the situation and say, well, actually, yes, you did put pressure on me.
Right. That's absolutely right. I think the trust is not a one-way street in my opinion, right? Like it's two people trust each other. And so in this case, you have to build up that rapport. It doesn't happen overnight, obviously. And I think that building up that rapport with the people that you work with, whether that be a direct report, whether that be a peer, or even your manager, someone else that you report to, there needs to be a level of trust where you can go to them. And I also think that opens up the door for guidance as well. So if something's being delegated that you don't know where to even begin, or like what's the starting point, like how do you make sure you have the relationship in place where you can go to that person and say, hey, here's all the things I've tried, but I'm crying uncle, I need help. And know that that person's not going to hold it against you, that you need help.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point, is making sure that everybody is willing to ask for help when they need it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, my experience has been people sit in the corner either struggling or getting it all wrong or freaking out, and being able to ask for help and having the confidence to ask for help is not always obvious. It's saying, because when you ask for help, often you feel like you're being, you're not fulfilling your role. So you don't ask for help because you're worried that people will feel that will feel that you failed. How can you deal with that?
There's a couple of things. I think rewarding and recognizing those who ask for help, it is a trickle down effect, right? So not only, does that actually help build that confidence with that person and allow, say, hey, that's the right thing to do, but everyone else sees it too. Like, oh, if this person asked for help, and they're being recognized for the fact that they asked for help. Or the reality is, I think we all like to help people too. So I think most people want to help, right? So I'm super guilty of not asking for help when I should, but I love helping people. So there's kind of like a tug of war there within myself, and I have to remind myself, like, you love helping people, so why wouldn't you go and assume that someone else likes helping you too? So I think that in general, actually, the more people help each other, the more, again, it goes back to that, a virtuous cycle again, where if you start to recognize it and see it as a strength that someone can actually ask for help at the right time, and I think that becomes part of the culture.
Yeah. Oh, and that's key. Asking for help at the right time, not too early, not before you've even tried to figure it out. Once you've tried to figure it out and you haven't been able to, you ask for help, which is hugely important. So we like to teach and we like to help.
Yes.
And another question is, you mentioned that everybody in the company sees this going on and then it becomes company culture. How do you amplify or make public the fact that somebody is asking for help without making people feel bad?
That's a good point. I think the majority of the time it is recognizing when there's been more than one person that has helped with the outcome. And so it's giving credit where credit is due. I think is a big aspect of doing that without basically calling out, well, this person stepped in right here to help me specifically, but to say, hey, this wouldn't have happened without these 5 people. We wouldn't have been able to get to this point without that. Or let me thank this group of people who have been along with me on this journey.
Brilliant. Oh, yeah, okay. And that leads me right into the next question, because we have weekly meetings at Kalicube. We've got a Cloud HQ where we all have a little virtual office and we can all knock on each other's doors, and it's very cool. And we have weekly meetings. And what I've noticed is people, when they say, well, this is my achievement for this week, this is what I'm really proud of this week, thank you to, and then they name check the people, as you said, who've been involved in that process. Thank you for your help supporting me. And that's made a huge difference. But then this question isn't particularly that. It's, what about the problems of working remotely? It's really difficult to get to know people, understand their strengths, and talk like this, and be hugely honest and open. That kind of physical closeness is needed. How can we get around that?
I would say it takes a lot more effort. Number one, like, I think you have to make a concerted effort to connect with people, outside of, like, you basically need to create a virtual water cooler, right? You need to create virtual coffee dates. I'll give you an example. So my team, we have our team meeting, which is very business oriented. And then while we went remote, we decided to create what we call a huddle. And it's our team huddle, and there's no agenda. And it's our opportunity just to connect as people, people that work with each other every single day. We spend more time with each other than we do sometimes our families, even though it's virtual. And so we have a huddle. And I think that's kind of to your point with this opportunity to kind of recognize others that have helped you in that virtual HQ that you have. And this is very similar to that, where you've had to make a concerted effort to kind of create the environment where it feels more in-person-ish. But it takes more work. I mean, frankly, it takes a lot more work to develop that kind of rapport being virtual than it does in person.
Right. And when you're talking about huddle, is it the whole team in a huddle or little groups in a huddle?
It's little groups. So we have smaller groups that get together, and we call it a huddle, and we get together and we just huddle. And it's our opportunity to just talk about life and, like, what's going on, and what we did for the weekend, or what plans we might have coming up, or and everything under the sun will come to fruition. And it essentially is our replacement for grabbing a coffee.
Brilliant. That's a really, really lovely way to end this whole conversation, which is sitting around in a huddle, having a virtual coffee. And it's something we're missing at Kalicube. There are a lot of meetings, but they're all business, they're all work related. And we're lacking, I think, that personal touch of the virtual coffee in a huddle. Brilliant. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Letitia.
Thank you.
We have one more question, which is, how will you use delegation to help with your brand SERP?
Oh, right. Well, we opened with my abysmal brand SERP. And so one of my goals as I start to progress to what's next for me post my corporate life, I am very focused on my brand SERP moving forward. And in this case, I would like to utilize some of the experts in this, and I will help delegate some of that to them. So I am blessed to have many good friends that are very, very good at this. And I can rely on them and kind of delegate and ask them to help me with my brand SERP, including some of the advice that you gave me today. And I will continue to seek your advice, read your book, and learn more about my brand SERP and how I develop that.
Brilliant. Oh, I love that answer. You managed to get that to fit together beautifully. And that question can sometimes be a sticker.
Yes. Especially when you don't have a great brand SERP.
Yes. But when you don't have a great brand SERP, everything you do will have a relatively bigger effect. So it's a positive.
Right. That's right. I absolutely believe that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Letitia. That was absolutely brilliant. We've got lots of hints for Kalicube. I hope everybody out there got lots of hints and tips and tricks and useful information to help them with delegating to build trust and confidence. And I'm going to introduce next week, which is the delightful Katie Brinkley, How to Post Less on Social Media for More Business. I really want to know how I can post less on social media and yet get more business from that less posting. Please, could you pass the baton?
I absolutely will. I too am looking so forward to hearing from Katie Brinkley. So I'm passing the baton to Katie. I would love also to learn how I can post less and get more from it. So I'm excited to hear from Katie Brinkley.
Yeah, she seems to be talking about the absolute nirvana of delight is we post it's going to be delightful. Thank you so much, Letitia.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. You get the song. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Letitia.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you. That was brilliant. Kalicube. It's all about your brand SERP.